live stream. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the public briefing of the Standing Committee on Accountability and Oversight. My name is Denny Rogers. I'm the MLA for Newbie Lake and chair of the Accountability and Oversight Committee. I'm going to ask the members in the room to now introduce themselves for the record, and we'll follow by those online as well. I'll start with Mr. Hawkins.
Good morning, everyone. It's Robert Hawkins, MLA for Wawzonek Centre. I'm happy to be here and glad to see this presentation. And I also say thank you to our millions of social media subscribers who tune in loyally. Thank you.
Kieran Tester, member for Range Lake.
Good morning, Richard Jerk. I'm MLA for Trinity.
Good morning, Danny McNeely, MLA for the Sawtooth.
Good morning. Janeway Allen Armstrong, MLA for Moorview, Clinton Region.
Julian Morse, MLA for Frame Lake and Yellowknife.
Shauna Morgan, MLA for Yellowknife North. Good morning. I'm Kate Reed. I'm the MLA for Grayslave.
And joining us online today.
Good morning. I'm Shirley Appley. I'm a member of the Central. Thank you.
Thank you, members. So today we will receive a briefing on the recent diamond mine supports. Please note this meeting is being live streamed on the Assembly's social media channels, and I'll just remind everyone to direct all questions through myself as the chair, just so things run smoothly and those in the booth can keep up, keep track. I will now pass it over to Ministers Cleveland and Minister Wawzonek to introduce themselves, their staff, and to move forward with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and members of committee for inviting Industry Tourism Investment along with Finance to brief you today on the short-term supports that the GNWT has provided to the NWT's diamond mines. With me today are Minister Carolyn Wawzonek, Minister of Finance, Menzie McEachran, Assistant Deputy Minister, Minerals and Petroleum Resources, Deputy Minister of Finance. We have Bill McKay. We also have behind us and joining us today Pamela Strand, Deputy Minister of Industry, Tourism and Investment, Robert Jenkins, Deputy Minister of Environment and Climate Change, as well as Drew Robertson, Ministerial Senior Advisor, and Andy Lesnacki, who is the Director of Diamond Royalties and Financial Analysis. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. As you're aware, in March, the GNWT received a letter from the diamond mines requesting short-term financial relief from the GNWT and federal government. The request for relief comes after experiencing rising economic pressures due to the high cost of operations and the unprecedented challenges in the global diamond markets. We, along with GNWT officials, met with leadership from each of the mines who indicated that should their current financial positions continue without change, that this could seriously jeopardize their mine life predictions and trigger significant pivotal decisions in the coming quarter. All of the mines also presented what they've been doing to each reduce their respective costs significantly. While the GNWT has long understood the reality that the diamond mines won't last forever, I want to be clear that there is a big difference between planned closure and abrupt, unplanned closure of one or all of these mines. It is well known that the diamond sector is a critical component of the NWT economy. The sector creates significant employment and business opportunities for residents, and premature closure would result in a loss of over 1,000 NWT jobs. The mine also provide a steady source of resource revenue for the GNWT and are a major contributor to the territorial GDP, making up an estimated 21% of our GDP. It's anticipated that abrupt closure would result in a cumulative loss of over $5.5 billion to the NWT between 2026 and 2030. For comparison, the automotive industry in Ontario makes up an estimated 1.5 to 2% of Ontario's GDP over the last 5 years. It is also clear that the results of abrupt closure will be for communities, which would include the loss of royalties and participation agreement payments used to fund core services and social programs, the loss of capacity to deliver essential services in communities, broad employment impacts resulting in higher demands on government support programming, and mental health and social pressures on families and communities alike. Independent of the request for assistance, the GNWT has been working with Diavik on plans to mitigate impacts on their planned closure date of April 2026. This includes transitioning mine employees to other jobs or careers and maintaining benefits to Northerners. Unplanned closures would mean adjusting the NWT's response quickly and removes part of the solutions included in the suite of options available for impacted Diavik employees. Unplanned closure of all mines would mean no alternative mining employment options. It would mean a complete loss of jobs, training, associated business, community supports, and other benefits. In providing relief for the mines, it is hoped that we will provide the time to stabilize and extend the benefits received from the diamond sector in the short and medium term. This will allow for additional transition planning for NWT residents and NWT businesses. While the GNWT is not able to make the diamond mines whole in terms of forecasted losses, targeted supports from the GNWT can improve confidence for investors and other financiers by signaling that government prioritizes the continuation of diamond mine operations as natural diamond markets rebound. This can have an effect not just on the diamond mines, but on sentiments towards investing in future NWT projects such as NWT critical minerals projects. Furthermore, there are encouraging signs that the diamond market is on an incredible rebound. Issues with oversupply are beginning to resolve as diamond inventories have been diminished over the last year, resulting in positive price predictions for natural diamonds going forward. In addition, the competition created by lab-grown diamonds appears to be on the decline as lab-grown profits have fallen for retailers and demand begins to balance with natural diamonds. The GNWT identified strengthening the economic foundation of the NWT as a priority under the mandate of the 20th Legislative Assembly. The NWT diamond sector makes up a significant proportion of the NWT's economic foundation. The premature closure of operating mines would mean that the NWT economy will need to start again from a position of economic hardship. This would require much work to even get back to the current economic baseline before any economic growth can be realized. As the diamond mines approach this crossroad, the GNWT has chosen to act. With a new federal government in place, the GNWT will work with Indigenous governments and their development corporations to advocate for infrastructure and other investments that support a strong economic foundation. Other governments across this country are facing equally daunting discussions around how to support industries key to the economic success of their provinces, territories, and the entire nation right now. This is about people, not mines. At the same time, it is important to support resource exploration and development in the territory to help critical and other mineral and energy resource projects to reach production and generate future benefits for Northerners. Through yourself, Mr. Chair, I'd like to pass to my colleague, Minister Wawzonek.
Thank you, Minister Cleveland. Minister Wawzonek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have fairly brief opening remarks before we get into a brief presentation. Thank you all for having all of us here and for the opportunity to present some information on this recent decision around targeted short-term financial relief to the three diamond mines. Obviously not a decision taken lightly, but it was, as Minister Cleveland detailed, a response to a pressing economic risk and the potential for sudden mine closures, which would have a ripple effect through the economy, and of course then would, as detailed, affect workers, communities, and Indigenous governments in particular across the Northwest Territories. So in our view, the measures were about taking a pragmatic approach in a difficult moment and, importantly, sending a signal that the GNWT is a committed partner and willing to act in the face of uncertainties. This support is about reinforcing confidence that the GNWT is a strong economic partner with industry and that with an industry that provides jobs to the Northwest Territories residents and to many local business opportunities. Strengthening our economic foundation and adapting to economic changes requires, of course, more than words. In return for accepting the relief, the diamond mines agreed to a number of commitments, including to use commercially reasonable efforts to maintain their operations until their planned closure dates, and also early communication should any further major changes be under consideration. They have also agreed or committed to applying the fiscal benefit they receive towards the Northwest Territories Indigenous and resident labor, as well as towards spending with the Northwest Territories Indigenous and local businesses. This is in line with their social and community commitments. They have also committed to working with the GNWT and other partners to continue to advocate for federal investment in infrastructure such as the winter roads, which of course remain critical to mine success, access, and affordability over the next few years. And so while this was a tough decision, Mr. Chair, it does also remind us of the need to be prepared for diamond mine closures that may happen faster than expected, particularly in an international climate of significant economic uncertainty. Thank you, Mr. Chair. With that, we do have a brief presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Wawzonek. We'll certainly move forward with the presentation now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will now share some additional information on the relief measures provided to the diamond mines. Next slide, please. Firstly, I'll cover the issue that the diamond mines signaled and their associated requests to GNWT. Then I'll go into the relief measures themselves and some steps GNWT is already taking to ensure environmental accountability when the mines close and to mitigate negative socioeconomic impacts associated with mine closure. So all three diamond mines signaled in a letter to GNWT on March 13th that there's a real possibility that they could enter closure in the very near future. This would almost instantly cut out almost a quarter of the entire GDP of the territory, representing a significant economic shock. The diamond mines contribute significantly to the economy of the NWT, both through hiring or employment and business spend. Collectively, they have a workforce of approximately 3,200, and as the Minister mentioned, over 1,000 northern workers. They jointly spend almost $1.3 billion per year, of which $900 million is with northern businesses. Next slide, please. You can see on this slide what the diamond mine requests were, and I'll briefly read through them for you. One was to modify the diamond valuation schedule so goods may be released immediately. The second was to eliminate property taxes for the mines. The third request was to use the large emitter GHG reduction fund to support northern payroll with the rationale that hiring northern labor brings down greenhouse gas emissions from flying in southern workers. And the final request was to support the cost of the winter road, because without that winter road, there will be a significant impact on mines, the NWT economy, in the form of employment and GDP. Next slide, please. So there are a number of considerations that GNWT took into account in looking at this potential support. First, that premature unplanned closure of one or more of the diamond mines would be a huge economic shock, as the Minister mentioned, and it would also affect morale, the capacity that's been built up in northern and Indigenous businesses, and future investment potential of the territory. Secondly, that public perception regarding receiving government relief to the private sector is definitely a factor, and that weighed against not supporting a sector that is key to the NWT economy. Thirdly, ongoing operations of the diamond mines and new mine development will support Indigenous jobs, businesses, and communities, and of course the Indigenous Economic Development Corporations that have grown reliant on the diamond mine business. And then additionally, there is more national attention right now on the Slave Geological Province and the associated proposed infrastructure corridor to Grays Bay, where there's the proposed port important to Arctic security and sovereignty. The importance of this and other northern corridors has been emphasized in the face of recent tariff and annexation threats from the United States, building on a long-standing awareness of Russian and Chinese Arctic ambitions. The diamond mines represent existing economic and infrastructure assets in the region that contribute to Arctic security objectives. Maintenance and development of this infrastructure corridor will not only help the diamond industry, but also the future growth of precious metal and critical mineral mines in this mineral-rich region. I should add that you may have seen in a recent article in CBC that the Indigenous Development Corporations generate over $100 million in revenue from the mines and 350 Indigenous jobs across the communities in the region, thanks to the business with the diamond mines. And, of course, the mines generate revenue for not only public governments, but Indigenous governments via impact benefit agreement payments, as well as land claim related revenue and taxes shared by public governments, such as GST and income tax. These provided targeted relief measures ease immediate headwinds and create a bridge toward a stronger, more diverse and resilient economy in line with GNWT's economic mandate to build sustainable, inclusive growth across the territory. Next slide, please. The first support was on innovations or improvements to the diamond mine schedule. And I should note that the current valuation process for diamonds, including early shipments as well as interim valuations, is an essential public control over rough diamonds that leave the territory and is in compliance or ensures compliance with the Northwest Territories mining regulations. So what was this measure? Firstly, to double the number of local diamond valuations in 2025-26 fiscal year and to cover the associated costs of those additional valuations. This dramatically improves cash flow by allowing producers to get their products to market faster. And, of course, they get the benefit of us covering the cost of these interim valuations. It is a very minor contribution for us that has a big impact. I say minor because the maximum total cost of this help is about $400,000. Both an immediate and long-term benefit is doubling the number of diamond valuations and expanding these early shipments, which moves 95% of the value of the diamonds to market sooner. Next slide, please. GNWT is also providing some temporary property tax relief for the diamond mines. And there's a commitment by the mines to keep 100% of these relief funds in the NWT for the benefit of Northerners. Property taxes, just for a bit of background, collected in the general taxation area, which includes the three mines, are treated as GNWT general revenue. And those revenues are allocated based on government priorities, mandate priorities that benefit residents and businesses, including the mines themselves. Property taxes on these mines are based on the assessed value of the assets of the mines, including the land. Now, the relief measure was to implement a temporary change to the general taxation area property class 4 mill rate for the 2025-26 fiscal year, which means foregoing revenues of about $11.2 million and benefiting the diamond mines, as you can see in that table, with significant benefits going to the operating mines and Snap Lake already being in closure, just a very small benefit there. Next slide, please. GNWT is also providing some relief through releasing funds that were paid by the diamond mines as a portion of their carbon tax into the large emitters GHG reduction fund. Now, that fund held 12% of all of the carbon tax paid by the diamond mines leading up to March 31st, 2024. The mines could apply for these funds in their individual accounts for eligible GHG emissions reduction projects. Now, the relief measure was to release the remaining balances from the large emitter GHG reduction fund, as described in this table that you can see here. So Acadie and Gahcho Kué are benefiting from this. The total amount flowing back to those mines is $3.8 million. And as for Diavik, They are not benefiting from this measure because they have already used their fund to finance their 2024 solar PV farm installation. Next slide, please. GNWT has also agreed to continue working with Indigenous governments and Indigenous development corporations to engage federal partners on additional infrastructure and transition supports, transition through closure and transition to our next opportunities, for example, in the Slave Geological Province in the critical minerals and precious metals space. So we will continue to work with the federal government, specifically our main liaison there at the feds is Natural Resources Canada, to source and provide the data they need to support decision-making for any additional supports for the Northwest Territories. And that data would include potential economic impact of the premature closures on the territorial economy. We've been working with the Indigenous development corporations to pull that data together. And of course, we'll be sharing that with federal colleagues. And furthermore, we also will continue to work with the diamond mines themselves to understand how they're working towards stability of their operations so that they can hopefully operate until their planned closure dates rather than suddenly in the near term. Next slide, please. GNWT has securities in place to ensure environmental accountability in the event of unplanned closure, should that happen. In other words, GNWT holds reclamation securities in the event that a mine does not fulfill its own reclamation obligations itself. There have been no changes to the amount or form of securities held by GNWT. Security amounts are set by the land and the water boards after a public process, and the GNWT holds the amount determined by the regulatory boards. GNWT holds these securities in forms that are absolute, irrevocable, and unconditional, so that the funds are available to the GNWT if and when needed. Currently, the amounts held for the 3 operating diamond mines you can see there on the slide, Acadie at $327 million, Diavik at $213 million, and Gahcho Kué at $81 million. Next slide, please. And of course, we at GNWT do and will continue to engage with the mines as they approach closure, and that is all part of planned closure. And it's much preferred, of course, to unplanned closure, and that's because the negative socioeconomic impacts can be mitigated. Diavik, for example, is taking steps to mitigate these impacts or potential impacts felt by its planned April 2026 closure in collaboration with GNWT departments, focused on identifying and pursuing actions to support northern employment and procurement through this process and in the longer term. Using Diavik's MyPath program, NWT employees working directly for Diavik, as well as contract employees from participation agreement communities, have specific supports to help them transition to new employment and entrepreneurial opportunities, if that's where they want to go into the future, following closure. And so these options are really designed to keep NWT employees in the Northwest Territories working for new employers or starting new thriving northern businesses. And these are being communicated, these opportunities, and connections are being made at a series of career fairs, several of which have already happened, more which are planned later in the spring and into the summer and fall. GNWT departments have also compiled a list of programs and supports that residents can access to pursue further training and education, to start, develop, or expand businesses, and for health and well-being supports as employees and their families navigate these big life changes. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to close off the deck and turn it back to yourself for the Q&A.
Thank you, Mr. McEachran. Certainly appreciate the update and the work gone into the presentation. I'm now going to open the floor for questions from members. We'll go around and do one question per member for the first round. If we can be as succinct as possible, we can hopefully get a second round in as well. And I have Ms. Reid starting us off today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your presentation. So in the minister's comments and then again in the slide deck, I heard that the rationale for northern residence allowances, which is how Gatchacoin is choosing to expend the large emitters fund, was to reduce GHG emissions. So I guess my question is twofold. I'll try to be brief, but is this not just a status quo of the workers that already exist, or are we no longer flying in Southern workers? Thank you.
Thank you, MLA Reid. Question for Minister Wawzonek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Chair, when we took the approach of how we would, whether or not to decide to change the large emitters program, the proposal from the diamond mines was that they could use this money to support the fact that they were flying folks in. From our perspective, really it was about finding a path forward by which we could, find some supports that were immediately available. And so the rationale that we approached was to do, well, frankly, and in our discussions with the diamond mines, it's what further planning they were doing. For instance, I think both of those that had not yet utilized their funds were and are still planning solar arrays. So it was about assuring ourselves that, was this large emitters fund going to be the make or break, rationale for them to continue with those plans? We were assured that that's not, that they both will benefit from having ultimate alternative sources of energy when they get to the stage of closure, assuming planned closure. And so in that sense, from our perspective, it was about ensuring that they had this cash available today so that they could enter a stage of planned closure. They are assuring us that they want to, formally put the funding available in a way that does support northern workers and reduce, therefore, the need to have fly-in workers. But from the perspective, fundamentally, it's that they were given the opportunity to free up that money and they could continue to employ northern workers. So, again, it's, I hope that answers the question. I'll stop. No, so it doesn't answer the question. I'm not sure, Mr. Chair, what else to say. The Large Emitters Fund was created around GHG emissions. And we've asked them to assure us that formally, the dollars for dollars that we've made available is going to support northern employment. That's their position on it. From our perspective, we're providing funding immediately in a way that was otherwise funding that was sitting there for them to use, as the mines to use for their operations. Again, given the opportunity to be assured that they would continue with plans around GHG emission projects, that this funding wasn't the reason to make or break that, but it would actually now go towards workers. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Wawzonek. Next, I have Mr. MLA Jericon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Minister. Thank you to your colleagues as well for painting a picture of what's happening here in the north in the mining industry. I just want to reflect back in the early days when I was a chief and I was involved in the negotiating 4IB agreements with our Yalners Inn First Nation. I also remember in 1992, choppers were flying around staking, dropping stakes in the snow and looking for diamonds and I've been through all that. And we knew the day was going to come when the mines were looking at to close. And the impact of the closure is also going to impact this government in terms of even if we say we had 1,000 families here, you times it by 3 or 4 children, et cetera, that's say 4,000 times that by transfer payments, so it would be over $100 million from Ottawa. So it impacts everybody. And I guess what I'm focusing on here is that, the impacts to our regional corporations right down to the guys working in the community. I remember back in 1992 when I was on band council that, we had a high unemployment rate of about 75% in our community. And when the mining industry came and it turned it right around. And so I know the local leaderships are concerned about that. But with all like business activity here in the north that's happening now as a result of the mining industry, I just have one question maybe you could help me with so I could better understand. And where do we go from here? My question to you as the minister is that for all intents and purposes, can you let me know that if we are in a recession here today? Thank you.
Thank you, MLA Jericon. Who would like to field that question? Minister Wawzonek.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I don't know that are going to suggest that we're in a recession today. The economy in the Northwest Territories is often very dependent upon what may or may not be happening in the broader Canadian economy. And I'm not sure that in this moment there is necessarily a consistent view on what's happening in the Canadian economy today. There's a lot of change happening internationally, and it seems to be happening in a very volatile way. So I can certainly say, Mr. Chair, we are expecting GDP reductions over the next few years. That is one measure of the economy and may well signal that we're entering a stage of recession type or of slow growth. On the other hand, we have other indicators that suggest that things are not so bad. Our unemployment rate's still low, employment rate's still high, and the amount that we get in terms of our average median income is still high. However, on the other hand, again, those numbers don't necessarily hold true community by community. So, Yellowknife and some of the regional centers tend to do better in terms of our employment numbers than elsewhere. So some of the traditional things that economists may use to measure a recession don't always measure as accurately in the north. I would say, Mr. Chair, diamond markets remain challenged, which is the single biggest contributor to our private sector economy. And if that continues, again, we don't know what the next 2-3 years will hold. There continues to be, as there has been for the last few years, a prediction that the diamond markets will return and bounce back. That prediction was as recent as this last winter, when, of course, the introduction, quite unexpectedly, of tariffs in the way that the U.S. president was doing it, pretty much took all bets off the table. So, if I sound a little uncertain, it's because I'm certainly not going to predict what President Trump may do, nor what global markets will do in response to it. And then the diamond markets as a luxury commodity are very dependent upon that. And our economy within the private sector is very dependent upon the diamonds for the moment. And last comment, though, Mr. Chair, is we have a very large public sector economy in the Northwest Territories, and that continues to provide us a cushion throughout all of these swings. So how's that for a long answer? Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Wawzonek. Next, I have MLA Morse.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess the question that stands out for me, looking at the presentation and having thought about this for a while, is why was the Large Emitters Fund itself targeted as one of the forms of relief, in the sense that my first kind of knee-jerk reaction to it was, well, we've taken a fairly positive story where we took a tax that was imposed on us, set it aside, had a mine come to us with a proposal, and turned it into a good news story where they established this solar farm. There's a number of benefits that are going to come from that. And so we actually had an example of a policy that had worked and was benefiting both industry and our climate goals. And so when I saw that this was this was part of the relief that GNWT was considering, it was a bit disappointing in that sense. And when I look at it compared to the amount of the tax relief, the relief they're getting is comparably quite small. And so it's not the most impactful thing. And I think it's probably fair to say, perhaps it's not, that amount of relief is likely not going to be the make or break for an industry that is, generating $2 billion of activity a year. It's quite a drop in the bucket. And so, I guess that's the first question, but not only why, but, as a result of providing this relief, I know that it's been tied to northern employment. Have we required them to bump up their northern employment numbers as a result of this relief that they're receiving? Like when they came hat in hand to us, did we go back to them and say, well, we're willing to give you relief, but you're gonna have to do some things for us? One of them is improving your northern employment numbers. Can we get a bit more background on the rationale for why taking money that was supposed to be an incentive and simply handing it over, how is that gonna help us pursue our various goals that the GNWT has? Thanks.
Thank you, MLA Morse. Minister Wawzonek.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So how will what seems like a drop in the bucket be an incentive or a support for the various goals of government? Mr. Chair, this was one of the requests that came from the diamond mines themselves, was to have access to the funding that has been sitting there for some years. Diavik was able to make use of it. The other two operating mines have not. And the numbers that are there are, while not, huge, they're not insignificant. So just shy of 1.7 million for Ikati and just a little over 2 million for Gachakwe. That's still not an insignificant amount of money, in my view. But it hasn't been used, quite frankly, for the intent that it was over the last several years. And, they were trying to identify, I think, and I don't certainly want to speak for them, but my understanding is trying to find areas that would be as minimal impactful on the GNWT and on the communities around the Northwest Territories, while also giving them some access to cash. So again, not my place to speak on behalf of the mines themselves, but I can certainly share the information that we were given, which is that they were entering a time, this again, if you'll think back, was at the time when the tariff threat was very real, where diamonds were looking like they would be one of the few areas that, even with pauses on other industries and on other tariffs, that diamonds in fact would be tariffed because they go in rough from here to either Belgium or India and would then have been subject to significant tariffs going into the United States. So this, as our basically single area that we actually export, this would have been the one thing that would have been facing, or one of the few things that would have been facing significant tariffs. So this was all happening in that moment. And meanwhile, we had a federal government that was in caretaker mode and unable to act. So the mineral resource industry comes to us. Chamber of Mines, I gather, was supported. We have DevCorps also writing letters making the same series of requests. And so looking at the impact to us, this was dollars that were not sitting in our general revenue fund, nor would they be coming in as revenue to the GNWT. So as far as adding to the areas of things that we could do to support the industry, this certainly did seem like one that should be explored. As far as whether or not any sort of single amount helps, Mr. Chair, the message that we got was that every little bit indeed helps. They were entering quarterly board meetings, several of these mines. They have boards that exist and operate in other parts of the world. They have assets all over the world. They have mines all over the world. And really, it's difficult to suggest that a mine in another part of the world, in South America or Africa, might have a community that is dependent upon it, that operation should subsidize an operation in the Northwest Territories because ours aren't doing so well. There's really no reason that a board should make that decision. There's no rationale for it. What we can do, though, as a government is stop and say, look, we're going to do everything we can to demonstrate our support for this industry, to demonstrate our support for these mines specifically that are here, and with the hope that then turns the tide in those board meetings so that they're not going to put these ones into any kind of care and maintenance or premature closure. And frankly, we're going to use every tool that we can. And last but not least, I think there was a question as to what we're getting in return. Mr. Chair, again, these mines are already subject to impact benefit agreements. They're already subject to socioeconomic agreements, all of which do have requirements that probably Mr. Cleveland's better placed to speak to in terms of employment numbers. They've been challenged to reach those employment numbers over the last few years, particularly, but in terms of northern employment, Mr. Chair, so is the Northwest Territories government sometimes challenged to reach some of our employment targets. But the mines did all agree to make a variety of best efforts with us to report back to us, to try to report back exactly where the dollar for dollar went. So the question earlier of, is it really status quo or is it not? We're just asking them to account for the money that went into them, and they're trying to do that as best they can to demonstrate that it's in fact going to support and maintain the jobs that we have here in the Northwest Territories. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Wawzonek. MLA McNeely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, ministers, and thanks for the presentation on your forms of relief. And shockingly, to add to this would be the residential and commercial foreclosures that may happen. we know what's going to happen if this closes, but to what extent, we don't know. So additionally, I'm just recommending that, we add a survey on foreclosures, whether it's commercial, whether it's residential. And this response on the relief package that you've identified, is it an answer to industry's request through a recovery plan, similar to a CCAA? So if there is a industry recovery plan and your response to that plan is this relief package, if it exists, can that be shared? Thank you.
Thank you, MLA McNeely. Minister Cleveland.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Chair, this was a preemptive effort by the diamond mines to reach out to us at a time of a very difficult time within the markets, to signal to us that they were in dire straits given the global diamond markets, and really reached out to us knowing the importance of the diamond mining industry to the Northwest Territories so that we could work together on relief measures. So there was no formal process that was taking place behind the scenes. This was really a matter of us working together to find out, while they're doing their own, mitigations internally to make sure that they're stretching their dollars as far as possible to maintain operations at this difficult time, that we could also work with them to signal to their board members that the GNWT and the residents of the Northwest Territories also are partners in the diamond industry. So that's really where this came from. So there is no additional process document to share. That would be kind of an NCAA, as the member referred to. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Cleveland. Next, I have MLA Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, the ministers here have argued that the purpose of these subsidies was to signal and show that the GNWT is a strong economic partner with the mines. So to me, the phrase economic partnership signals some kind of joint decision-making, like a business partnership of some kind. And so in exchange for these subsidies, are we receiving any kind of ownership interest in exchange from any of the mines? Are we receiving any sort of ability to have some joint decision-making authority? Do we have any ability to stop any of these mines from taking the money and still closing tomorrow? To me, the word partnership implies that we have some sort of joint decision-making going in. So perhaps the ministers can clarify whether there was ever discussion of GNWT taking on any ownership interest or any decision-making power in exchange for the millions of dollars that we're offering. Thank you.
Thank you, MLA Morgan. Minister Cleveland.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Chair, long ago, about 25 plus years ago, when the diamond mines, when diamonds were first discovered in the territory, it was really the turn of how diamond mining was going to be done different in the Northwest Territories. We saw the introduction of socioeconomic agreements, as my colleague referred to, and also the introduction of benefit agreements, which are a relationship between Indigenous governments and the mining proponents themselves. Really, we have a shared interest in the territory to ensure that benefits of mining operations are retained in the territory. And so that's where that partnership comes from, is the fact that we expect that there is benefit from our mining sector to residents and to the Northwest Territories, and that we are very much invested in that because we are putting together regulations that really compel that piece, and that's been a long-standing piece here in the territory for the last few decades. In addition to that, it is a business relationship, but it's a community relationship as well, because the diamond mines have really invested beyond just, financials and jobs. They've invested in communities. We have housing that has gone into communities because of legacy projects from mines. We have a field here in Yellowknife that is here because of benefits from mining. And so I would say not so much an equity ownership partnership, but certainly a partnership where we have expectations of what our our pieces in that as a territory and as residents. The other piece that I would add to that is we do have a memorandum of understanding that we have with the diamond mines, where we have an expectation that they maintain and continue to increase as best as they can their both northern workforce and their investment in NWT and northern businesses. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister Cleveland. Next, I have MLA Testart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the ministers and their witnesses today for not only bringing the presentation, but making this decision in the first place to support our most critical industry here in the NWT. I actually reached out to Minister Wawzonek as soon as she made the decision to commend her on doing it so swiftly, because this is something that industry has been asking for quite some time. And I think it sends a very clear message that companies who invest in the Northwest Territories, in our economy with jobs and growth, will have the support of our government when they're facing extraordinary challenges beyond their control. And it's not just the mines, it's the Indigenous Development Corporations, some of us who are present today, representative today in this room, the small businesses and the everyday workers who rely on industry to pay their bills, feed their families, and grow their opportunities. Active mines are also part of economic reconciliation. The mines provide impact benefit agreements linked directly to, or provided directly to Indigenous governments and nations, along with socioeconomic benefits that are produced through similar agreements. I don't think we should be trying to shake down industry if we hope to grow the economy. Mines are a business, even if they're $1 billion business, and you can't put a gun to their head saying, come on, what are you going to give us, unless you give something back. They're already giving back with all of these other benefits. We can't have an economy built solely on the government. We know that's not going to work because we can't afford that, and nobody wants that. GNWT jobs are good, but there's more out there than just working for this government. I don't think this is a drop in the bucket, as has been suggested today. It's been asked for by all three mines and numerous Indigenous-owned companies who've gone out to support them as well. And I think, it's an absurd suggestion to think that we should own or operate a mine as a result of this kind of benefit or a subsidy. Subsidies are designed to create an economy, to stimulate economic growth. And when we are facing a recession, which I believe we are, I'm glad my colleague asked that, we do need to grow the economy and keep these mines going for as long as possible. So, quite frankly, I'm not sure why we're meeting today. This is a very self-explanatory thing. I'm glad we had the extra information to share with the public, but this is a no-brainer for me and anyone who cares about growing a strong, stable northern economy. So thank you for being here. I don't have any questions.
Thank you, MLA Testart. No questions, just a comment. Certainly appreciate that. Next, we have online Ms. Yakalaya.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the members for the presentation. I have one question about when they said they would use the large emitter fund to support northern payroll, with the rationale that hiring northern labor brings down greenhouse gas emissions from flying in southern workers. What assurance are we going to be getting that the needed professional personnel that are probably more likely from down south, are we going to be building or creating those resources that we need in the Northwest Territories? Or are they going to be professions that we need in the at the mines coming from the north? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. MLA Yakalaya. Minister Wawzonek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Chair, again, that was a position advanced from the mines in support of the suggestion that the Large Emitters Fund could be utilized. Again, longstanding recognition that this was intended to be focused, that the Large Emitters Fund was intended to be focused on providing funding to support GHG emission reduction projects. And so the argument being, look, if we can maintain our northern workforce, then we're not flying more folks back from the south. But MLA Yakalaya makes part of the point, which is that there are some technical positions and some positions that simply have not been able to be filled by northern workers over the last many, many years. So there does continue to be a reliance on southern employment. By making the decision to add this amount to the other relief measures that we came down with, again, have some agreement and some assurance from the diamond mines that they would make efforts to well, first of all, that they would continue to maintain the employment that they do have of Northwest Territories resident labor, including Northwest Territories Indigenous employment numbers, which I think were detailed in some greater detail yesterday in the reports that came out through the development corporations, that they too would also continue to do the level of spending that they have with Indigenous business and development corporations as well as other northern businesses. And what they're doing for us is to ensure that they're tracking, the value into the value that is going towards those commitments, and then meeting with officials from the government on a regular basis to maintain some reporting on how things are going, on what they're spending this additional money on, how it's supporting local operations, which then offsets what would be otherwise losses that would have to be covered by these companies, and which then, of course, creates a challenge that we run into with with their international boards, who might be looking again at why they would want to continue to subsidize these operations, as opposed to, from our perspective, maintain this employment. So, yeah, I can't necessarily predict who exactly or which positions they're able to hire locally, other than to say that, again, the commitment longstanding has been that there's an expectation that a certain number of positions are filled locally, and that they continue to try to meet those obligations in the socioeconomic agreements. Keeping them open maintains those socioeconomic agreements and maintains those benefits from them. Thank you. Oh.
Thank you, Minister Wawzonek. Minister Cleveland.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, from a training perspective, I wanted to add a few things to that. So as we see, the transition for Diavik next year, Diavik has been working for many years on their MyPath program with the intent of providing a lot more staff to our other mining operations in the Northwest Territories. And so they have, through their MyPath program, training programs where if somebody wants to go to a different type of mining field, they'll support that training initiative. If somebody wants to go to a completely different career, they'll support that initiative. And so they're seeing some staff going to other operations within the Rio Tinto family, and they're seeing some staff going to, for example, Gachquay Mine. And then some are starting their own businesses, and so they are supporting as best as possible and as much as they can their existing staff. In addition to that, the Mine Training Society recently received federal funding of upwards of $8 million focused on kind of the next phase of mining. So previously their focus was largely on underground mining, and as we know, critical minerals is a different type of mining, and so more training opportunities there, and really excited to see what Mine Training Society chooses to do with that influx of funding and investment from the federal government. In addition to that, we still also have our education, culture, and employment workforce development funding. One great example of that is the wage subsidy program, where employers can access upwards of $30,000 to support training initiatives with new staff that they have in order to get them to where they need them to be. So there are options out there as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister Cleveland. Next I have MLA Whalen Armstrong.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I am quite pleased about providing the assistance to the mine closure, because we know that we know a lot of people that are working there, especially from small communities, and everybody's going to be impacted with the mine closure. Even, like you mentioned, Indigenous organizations, development corporations, governments. It's going to have an impact on our economy, we know that. So it is good, because in the past, when the mine closed, there was no such financial assistance like the GNWT is providing. So that is really good. And I know that over the years since the mine opened, there was a lot of training provided, especially from mine training. So they did really well. They did good for our people, and Aurora College too was also another one too. So, so with that in mind, what I would like to know, I know that the older worker, I know they're going to retire, and I know that there's one, a person that I know he retired from one mine, went to the other one. Now he's going to retire. But I'm worried about the younger ones. So what are we doing to retrain or have jobs in the future once the mine closes? So what is the GNWT doing to help the younger workers? I know some of them, they're saying they're gonna go back to school, so which is good though, but it's just that, so what are we doing to help? Because many of these people, they're gonna come back to the north. So what are we doing as a GNWT, to keep our young people here to, after, I know life in the south, they're gonna come back. So that's all, but I am very grateful, thankful that, with GNWT for the financial support that they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, MLA Whalen Armstrong. Minister Cleveland.
Okay. I'll start and I'll pass to you. Okay. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So as I just mentioned, the MyPath program through DIVEC is one of the key supports that is kind of the front and center for DIVEC staff. GNWT is supporting that through, of course, attending career fairs that DIVEC has been hosting up there. And that not only allows us to get in front of people as far as supports from ITI for those that want to start businesses, supports for student financial assistance, but also employment and community employment. Not everybody wants to stay in a 2-and-2 type of work environment. Some people are wanting to transition back to employment within their community. Some people are wanting to, as you say, retire, start businesses. And so really working with DIVEC to make sure that the programs that we do have available are known and are offered directly to individuals there. In addition to that, Mr. Chair, there's also work with our Indigenous development corporations, 2 of which are sitting behind me and 2 of which that I speak with quite often. And they also are working on their own workforce development plans, because this is a very all-encompassing industry, and there's a lot of different opportunities that come from that. Up the street, we have work being done at Giant Mine, and there's a lot of talk about how do we draw the most benefit from that as far as workforce development in the work that is happening around the territory. And one of the things is that a lesson learned is we need to ensure that when people are doing these projects, that they're leaving them with some form of accreditation or credentialing, so that they're able to take their work experience and on-the-job training from job to job to job, because we know that one mine site does not last forever, and it's important that the training that somebody receives in that time and that experience does. So that's another key part is those relationships and those partnerships, in addition to what is the GNWT doing, not just from a workforce development perspective and supporting people in that transition, but there's also the next chapter of mining in the Northwest Territories. So myself and Minister Wawzonek work quite hand in hand, because we know that one of the biggest barriers in the territory is our significant infrastructure deficit. And so it makes it difficult for mining proponents who, even though they make great discoveries in the territory, a lot of the rocks that people turn over are quite exciting rocks. And I'm sitting in a room of mining people and geologists who can attest to that. But it makes it very difficult to attract investment for a project when we don't have the energy resources that we want and we need, or the road infrastructure that is required. Because critical, diamonds, you put them on a plane and you fly them wherever they need to go. Critical mineral mining is far different. You need the road infrastructure to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Cleveland.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. Conscious of time, but that actually kind of dovetails nicely to the other hat that I wear, which is for strategic infrastructure and energy. And really, Clecho government is a very good example of another Indigenous government in the Northwest Territories who are extremely active right now and put forward a demonstration of how, as co-management partners in terms of our land and natural resources, we can be on the world stage saying that this is a place to come and have environmentally, social, and governance processes that are world-class, and be open. That means we're open for business. It doesn't mean we're not open for business. But sometimes it does mean more than just saying that. And this was an opportunity to do a little bit more than just say that, and to come forward. But it really, everything about what we were doing is about the jobs for Northerners in a sense, because we are looking to ensure that the labor force we have today in these mines is available in 4 years and 5 years, when we are hopeful and expecting that there's several new mines open. They may not be as large as the diamond mines, but that's fine, because maybe they'll scoop up all of our northern labor if that northern labor is still there. If there's a gap in time because there's a premature closure, that labor's not there. But, we're really at tipping points where, and we've known it for long, and we're hustling fast now, because we need to get the Mackenzie Valley Highway moving, hopefully on a timeline that will help support some of the transition. We need to, be at the Tulson facility expansion, again, on a timeline that will hopefully align well with what's coming down the pipeline. So a lot in the space of sort of 2027 to 2035, in my view, can be quite game-changing for the Northwest Territories. But that's still a couple of years away. If we face premature closures of the mines today, losing the inputs to the economy and losing that labor force, those folks who are there today won't necessarily be in the north to transition, nor will industry be having their eyes on us to be investing when we're ready for them to invest, when we're fixing some of our road problems and our energy problems. So yeah, what are we doing for the workers of the future is to make sure that we show them that we're serious, that we're going to have a pathway for economic growth in the long term by fixing some of the long-standing problems in energy and transportation corridors. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Wawzonek. MLA Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I guess I won't leave a lot of mystery behind this. I'll just say I'm supportive of the initiative that was taken forward and acted upon. I think the real criticism here, if we're going to be frank, is about how this was done under the esoteric society we call cabinet. In other words, they did this decision and tell us what they're doing. Quite often I find my more objection is about the fact that there's not engagement of members, and I bring many examples up, such as, but we're not here to talk about them today, but they continue to be the long-standing erosion of the relationship between cabinet and members. Now, that doesn't change the fact that I wouldn't have come to the same determination on the decision, because we're here to talk about the decision, it within itself. But a reminder both to the public and to members is that most often members don't matter, and this is a proof of it in the pudding. Now, specific to the decision, when this industry represents 20% of our GDP, it's really difficult to ignore, and I view this more, and I wish we had this discussion, but frankly, there was no interest in sharing it, but I view this as a policy reversal in some manner that they get some of their money back. I mean, as I was just discussing a moment here ago with my colleague, Mr. Testard, I mean, we're not seeing a special warrant of millions of dollars on the government's coffers or debt wall, et cetera, in order to sustain this. They're getting a policy reversal of their money back. So, without skating the line too closely, I mean, what did people want us to do? Did they want us to grow government more? When government represents, public administration more in our GDP, so, you have to, if we're not stimulating our private economy, I mean, it just means the government has to find another solution. Now, does that mean social subsidies or whatnot? So, Mr. Chairman, I won't tie too much more time up. I think I just want to say, frankly, the initiative I would have been in support of had I been given a chance to talk about it, but really this is constant, which is backdoor consultation to members, and hence that's why some are more concerned than others. Principally, as I said, I'm not against what would have done, and as a matter of fact, I may have been in line from the beginning, but you never know. Thank you.
Thank you, MLA Hawkins. That's a question. No question there. I see. Okay, so that's the end of round one. Certainly for myself, I don't have. Oh, we got someone playing the piano in the background. Certainly, I appreciated this was a difficult decision to make, and I'm sure it was labored over. And I know when I'd spoken to Minister Wawzonek on that, it was one I think that had to be made. Like some of my colleagues have said here, certainly I appreciate that. I appreciate the message that it sends to industry. I know in my region, certainly, when we look at the energy, the undeveloped energy industry that we have up there, and I know Mr. McEachran knows we've had several long conversations around that. So certainly, when you're sending a message to industry, you're sending a message to all industry, and certainly appreciate that, as well as a growing satellite station up there as well. So certainly appreciate that. Certainly appreciate that it was a difficult decision, but I think at the end of the day, one that did have to be made. So with that, we'll move on to round two. I have a couple of members already that have indicated they'd like to ask a second question. I'll start with MLA Jericon. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And earlier I talked about the issue about recession, and I mean, we already know that any industry, when you get two negative quarters, sparks the interest of negative growth. And so here to the north, we got 3 mine closures. So I guess I know the minister didn't answer this, but when you get that kind of stats, and so the question I asked, the answer should, I didn't hear from the minister, but it was yes. Moving on though, but right now in the north, industry needs certainty. And I mean, I chair the Impact Review Board. I sat on the other side of the table, watched the industry come in, and I hear the concerns. And one of the things they talk about is that they need certainty, and land claims needs to be settled. We've been saying that for a long time. And the other thing that stands out for me as well is that we got 2 CEOs here from Indigenous governments, and they're taking on a huge risk, and now that the mining industry is closing. And I am concerned that what are we doing? Can this government do more to work with Indigenous regional corporations so that you could benefit in terms of business, creating jobs for our young people, et cetera? And I know it's about a 3-part question, but my last one will be, is the social economic agreement. It's been in place since the mine was created for each diamond mine. So how much money we have in the bank, and where's that money going? Has it been spent in programs along the way? I don't see it in this report. So if maybe you could elaborate a little bit on that. But for now, Mr. Chairman, I just want to point that out that, we're going to be going through some tough times here in the north, and especially in the mining industry. And as a government, we need to start doing more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ajara Khan. For a question in there, Minister Cleveland.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Chair, the socioeconomic agreements speak to hiring, so northern employment and business procurement, so northern benefit. There aren't revenues that come with the socioeconomic agreements. That is seen through royalty revenues, which are shared with Indigenous governments, and through payroll taxes as well that we see come to the federal government, or the territorial government, and that goes into general revenues and supports the GNWT being able to pay for programs and services as well. In regards to relationships with the development corporations in the territory, very happy to work with them. They all have my personal cell phone number, and I'm very happy that they use it. And there's a lot of information sharing that goes out. Myself and Minister Wawzonek met with one of them last week, and another one I am currently working on setting up a time with. And then there are multiples there's a group of development corporations as well that come together, and we're able to kind of sit down a few times a year to talk about how we can work together. And I think that's really important, and a relationship that I'm very happy to have and maintain. In addition to that, there is, efforts within the next chapter of mining that I was talking about with our advanced projects and securing their workforce development plans so that we can actually share with communities, what it is that they're looking for in their operations, and then from there, really work with, like you say, with development corporations as to, okay, what does this mean and how can we prepare for this? And so from a few of our advanced projects, I'm currently waiting for those workforce development plans, and as soon as I do have them, we can have a sit down not only with the proponent but also with schools in the region so that their career education advisors know, able to sit down, for example, with the development corporations as well. So this is something that I want to be strategic about. I want us to be ready, and I'm doing efforts to make sure that as far as workforce development is concerned, that we can do our best to be there. It also helps that organizations like DIAVEC are also part of that and are supporting their existing staff to transition into their desired next careers. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Cleveland. Minister Wawzonek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just very briefly on the last part of the 3-part question around, as a government, we need to do more. And again, Mr. Chair, some of the conversations Mr. Cleveland outlined that we have with CEOs from the development corps, obviously at bilaterals with Indigenous companies, or sorry, with Indigenous governments, small, medium-sized businesses. And, I'm just launching the current round of budget dialogues where I have an opportunity to have some feedback directly from different sectors and different stakeholders and different partners. But having done so over the last few years, a couple of major things come up repeatedly. Labor, lack of labor, and lack of available labor, lack of skilled labor, and then the costs, high cost of being in the north. And the cost part breaks down to energy costs and transportation costs largely, as well as the labor issue. So Mr. Cleveland spoke a bit about some of the efforts on the labor front, but with respect to the other two, those are big changes that we have to tackle. How do we fix our energy systems when we have 20-some different microgrids scattered across 33 communities? And how do we fix our transportation networks when there's very few roads connecting our communities in a meaningful way across this territory? There's stretches across the South Slave, some stretches in the north, but the whole middle is not connected. So that, looking at government needing to do more, if and when we can signal to industry writ large that we are in fact meaningfully going to get our energy systems connected, make them greener, make them more reliable, more sustainable, and connect our roadways so that not only are our communities facing resupply supports, but they're having lower costs, and we can start to move goods around and move other things around. And industry, if they're going to build a mine, they can build a spur. They don't need us to do that final leg. They need us to get us at least into the ballpark. And so that, again, that is something that is, advancing, and it's advancing in partnership with MOU partners on the Tulson. It's advancing in partnership with Indigenous governments along the Mackenzie Valley Highway, for example. And it's advancing with partners who are looking at the energy opportunities that they see in their communities. So I think we're going to get there. It's just going to take a little bit of time, but we need to be able to signal that we're making progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Wawzonek. MLA Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there's a lot of emphasis in the rationale for this that we want to avoid early closure earlier than planned. But the problem is that planned closure dates are usually a moving target, right? So all of the existing diamond mines are either beyond the end or nearing the end of what they have originally planned for closure. Gachukwe was predicted to have an 11-year lifespan and began production about 10 years ago. Ekati began in 1998. Lifespan has changed a bit, but there was an official end-of-life date as 2026. Diavik, we all know, is already winding down on the brink of closure. So I know that we always hope and we latch on to news and announcements that, the mines think they may have found more and they're going to keep going longer than we thought. But I'm wondering, how has the government even determined what the planned closure dates were going to be before these subsidies to then be able to even figure out whether the mines continue on until closure dates? Because sometimes, those can change day by day depending on announcements about what may or may not be there. Also noting that Ekati still doesn't even have an approved closure plan, so we're talking about, the need for a planned and orderly closure. We don't even know what that will look like because we don't even have the approved closure plan. So how is the government even judging what are the proper closure dates that we should be expecting to know whether these efforts are going to push us towards that versus what we would all love to hope and dream that maybe these mines could keep going forever. Maybe there'll be another 5 years and another 5 years, maybe. But what evidence do we have to base what is a reasonable closure date and what we should be planning for? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, MLA Morgan. Minister Cleveland.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Chair, I'll start with I'll start with Diavik. Diavik, for a number of years, has signaled that their anticipated closure is in March of 2026. That is still the date that they're working toward. But knowing that at the end of the day, they're operating a business, and Rio Tinto, their parent company, has a number of mining ventures around the world. And at the end of the day, they need to ensure that their mining ventures are are accountable and are viable. They are answered to a board, and the board ultimately makes decisions as to what their business direction is. And so while their anticipated date is March of 2026, we know that there's been a lot happening in the world over the last few years, and particularly this year, that has really abruptly changed markets and created a lot of uncertainty in especially diamond markets and other markets around the world, and that is having a drastic impact. At the same time, the world is really looking to critical mineral mining, and so at the end of the day, we don't have control over that. The member is absolutely right. These are private entities and private businesses, but what we're trying to do is ensure that at the end of the day, that this happens strategically and it happens in the planned way that was supposed to be, it was supposed to be incremental. It wasn't supposed to all happen abruptly at once, unplanned, with a tremendous amount of uncertainty and a tremendous amount of impact to the Northwest Territories. So we really are, at the end of the day, trying to get as much out of and as much time out of the diamond mines as we absolutely can. I think that is fair, given the impact that it has on the territory. At the end of the day, we do have a Caddy and Gachquay that have plans for closure that are years away. But given the volatility of the markets right now, that does have an impact on their operations as well. And our worst case scenario would be 3 diamond mines closing right away. And that is what we were signaling to industry that we do not want, that we are here as partners at the end of the day, that we are all together investing in Northerners, because these mines are far more than just a diamond operation. These mines really are legacy stories for each of these organizations and operations that are really investing in the North. And at the end of the day, they want these to be incredible legacy projects, and we want to support them to be incredible legacy projects. They want closure to happen in a calm and planned fashion, as do we, and they want to be able to essentially close the doors at the end of the day, saying that they did good in the North and that they changed the legacy of mining in the North. And I think that that's commendable, and I think that we all have common goals as far as that regard at the end of the day. But the member is right, nothing in business is for certain, but this provided some certainty and definitely a signal to industry that was needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Cleveland. I still have 2 members. I'll ask, we are getting very, very tight on time. I'll ask the members to be as brief as possible in the preamble and hopefully get both second questions in. MLA Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try to be as quick as possible, and just want to build upon, I guess, the point that I made earlier, and just say, look, I don't necessarily disagree with the concept of providing support to industry in tough times. I think that's common practice for governments to do in many jurisdictions, and it happens across Canada for obvious reasons which have been articulated here today, namely the huge economic benefits that these projects can bring. I just want to be clear that where I maintain concern is in our government's track record when it comes to taking full advantage of the opportunities granted to us by having these industries here. So I think that we can do better than simply being thankful that they're here, especially considering it's clear that they do need our support as well at times. I just would note, the Standing Committee on GovOps is doing a review of the Heritage Fund. Our Heritage Fund is worth less than a percentage point of the profits pulled from this territory by mining. We have captured less than 1%. Hundreds of millions of dollars have gone into the Winter Road over the past 20-something years. We have no permanent infrastructure to show for it there. That was an opportunity that I think was missed by many, many governments back, so I'm not putting this on Cabinet shoulders, but just illustrating that there are ways to, as Cabinet is putting it, partner with industry to use industry for the benefit of the Northwest Territories. And I'm simply making the point that I think we need to, it needs to be a two-way street. And, when industry comes to us saying they need support, I think it's the job of government to say, well, we want to push you to ensure that the benefits are staying in the territory, that we are maximizing job potential, and all the various things that government needs to do to ensure that we get the most out of industry. So I would just say that I'm not necessarily here to criticize the government for making the decisions they did. I'm just here to ask questions. And Yeah, with regards to the large emitters fund specifically, I mean, this was a policy decision that was made, and I think the difficulty for me is that it was working, and it had worked, and we had actually used that money to partner, I want to stop using that word, but we had used that word to incentivize, you know, a positive development in one of the mines, and it's a bit of a shame to see that now, that positive development be, I think, tarnished a bit by allowing the fund to go. I was more concerned about that than the tax relief. So those are my thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you, MLA Morris. Not sure there's a question in there, but certainly allow Minister Cleveland to provide a feedback.
I'll start and then I'll pass to the Minister of the Large Emitters Fund. I don't agree, or I don't disagree with the member. I fully agree with the member. We need to be able to capture benefits. And so when I'm talking about, you know, sitting down with DevCorps and talking about how do we, you know, capture some of these workforce development plans, which they are driving, and I am happy to, like, let me in the vehicle, let's go. It is absolutely imperative that we change that narrative, we change that trajectory, and start making sure that we end up with things that last forever, and workforce development is one of those pieces. As far as, you know, a permanent infrastructure road up the Slave Geological Province, hindsight is 20/20. Yes, please. I would have loved if we had done that 25 years ago, especially just given the cost of road infrastructure today versus what it was decades ago. In regards to industry and making sure that we are, you know, working together and that we are incentivizing what we need. Yeah, I'd also think it's fair of me to point out that at this point, industry is the single biggest investor in Arctic security right now. They're the ones that are creating 24/7 operations in Arctic places where we keep saying we need them. And so absolutely, industry is doing, they're doing the work, and we want to make sure that at the end of the day, when they're investing billions of dollars, we're retaining benefit from that.
Thank you. Minister Wawzonek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So one more time on the large emitters, Mr. Chair, again, it was the notion that, you know, less than $4 million here being provided to the industry in the circumstances that I won't repeat now sends any kind of signal. You know, Mr. Chair, we did last year as a government come forward and say that we want to reach net zero emissions by 2050. And there may be some who on the industry side would say, look, that's very difficult. You're not going to do that. You're sending a signal to all of us that we aren't going to be able to operate because you don't have the energy infrastructure to provide it. And I would have equally said that that is not the case, that we do intend to have our cake and eat it too, that we can be a jurisdiction that puts ourselves forward, that takes some concerted risk in some of these, you know, markers, and that we're going to find our pathway forward. So I don't think that this is that this small amount sends any sort of signal that we're not equally and still committed to targets like the 2050. On the Heritage Fund, Mr. Chair, that also happens to fall under the Department of Finance. And I know the member knows this, but there is a difference between profits versus revenue. These diamond mines haven't always necessarily been very profitable, although they do, you know, certainly generate revenues, but they have extremely high expenses that they have to fund as well. And we didn't actually start having a Heritage Fund until devolution in 2014. So the reality is we missed the days where the profits might have been most significant, where they were taking out the larger stones, more and better quality stones, and frankly, when the markets were in a different state than what they have been over the last few years. So the Heritage Fund, just want to be able to say is it's a bit more complicated in that regard, because again, it's only been around since devolution, didn't necessarily catch the heydays, but you know, other than that, doesn't mean that we don't look forward as we hope we are entering a new cycle of mining in the Northwest Territories, and doesn't mean we don't look forward to growing that Heritage Fund. And again, I appreciate that committee's taking on the challenge of looking at how we can do that in a forward-looking way into a different mining future. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Wawzonek. Final question goes to MLA McNeely, and just to note, we do have about 4 minutes here.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. 4 minutes, I'll take 2. In my closing comments, it's more of a comment than a question. I totally support the actions taken by the ministries here on designing a form of relief, which also sends a certainty message to industry and the vendor community. And it's going to be troubling and a challenge to bring these companies back into profitability, which brings certainty to staying here. As we know, collectively, these companies have lost over 300 million. Now, that's a significant amount of money. And if I was in their boots, I'd be looking at how can I close up shop and move. Hopefully, they don't. So the message that you have sent in designing the relief, I thank you, and I will continue to support any way possible for industry's presence. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, MLA McNeely. Okay, well, that concludes our meeting today. I'd certainly like to thank the ministers, the staff, folks that are joining us in the back for attending today. Thank those who tuned in online. And the public proceedings have now concluded. Thank you.